All right, welcome to the Daily Level Up Show, episode 15. I am your host, Roosevelt Cooper, and this show documents my journey as a gamer dad entrepreneur. So, today wasn't really a big business day for me. Most of the day was spent doing work for my full time job. However, I did get some interesting form of gaming in. I'll tell you about it. And who knows, maybe this might be something that you might want to do as well. But for those of you who are familiar with fantasy sports, you may be familiar with season long fantasy sports. So, with season long fantasy sports, you build a team, and whatever team you build, based upon you drafting particular players, you follow along that with the progress of that team over the course of a full season. So right now, baseball is in spring training. Many people are getting ready, or if not getting ready, have already had their season-long fantasy baseball drafts. So they're picking their players right now, and then they're going to take those players and they're going to follow those players on how they do for the whole season. Many leagues will have like head to head matches where you'll compete for a week against another person's team, and whichever team scores the most points based upon your league scoring system, then that particular player gets the win for the week. So that's in season long fantasy sports. So what I was working on today, I actually run a similar concept. However, it's not for season long fantasy sports, it's actually for daily fantasy sports. So I've created a season long daily fantasy sports league. So, how does it work? Basically, each week the players in the league get matchups against an opponent. And then, depending upon what sport we play, they will create a head to head contest on the particular daily fantasy sports site that we're playing. Right now, I only do DraftKings. I used to do a bunch of different sites and had a bunch of different leagues, but it got too much, so I pretty much cut it down to the two leagues that were the most active and had the most players. So they'll create contests on the particular fantasy sports site, and then they will compete against each other. So, for example, tomorrow starts the week for my fantasy hockey league. So I sent them all their matches today. That's what I pretty much spent all my non-business time doing, working on the matches, compiling the scores, calculating the rankings, and so on and so forth. So basically, I sent them all the matches, and then someone will create the match. Their opponent will join the match, and then they'll build their daily fantasy sports lineup based upon the parameters required for that particular site. So then they'll compete against each other, and whoever's team scores the most, they will win that particular round. So the way we have it set up, each week is 3 rounds, 5 rounds if it's a championship match, and they compete against each other. They'll play each other 3 times that particular week. And out of those 3 times, whoever wins the most, they are the winner of that particular matchup. But then we've added something that I've taken from the mixed martial arts world, and it's the concept of knockouts and submissions. So if a knockout occurs when you beat your opponent by more than a certain margin. So for example, in my daily fantasy hockey league, the margin is 50 points. So if you beat your opponent in any given round by 50 or more points, you get a knockout and you win the match completely. You don't have to play them anymore for that particular week. You're done, you win the match. And then there's a submission. A submission occurs when your team that you created, your lineup that you built, when it fails to score a minimum amount of points. So for our fantasy hockey league, that minimum amount is 70 points. So if your team fails to score at least 70 points, then that is a submission. You lose the match. You don't play anymore for that particular week. You have tapped out. You've lost the match by submission. So that's pretty much what I was working on today. I was working on my daily fantasy season-long league because I was a little behind on the records and stuff like that. So had to catch up and get that together for both my hockey league, and I also run the same thing for UFC as well. We have a UFC season-long daily fantasy sports league as well. So it's a pretty cool concept. If you're into fantasy sports and you like being the commissioner for season-long fantasy sports, it's pretty much the same concept. You have to do a little bit more work because the sites aren't really designed with this particular concept like they are designed for season-long leagues, but it's actually pretty cool. And then what we also have, so as you win matches, you develop a win-loss ranking. So let's say you win 2 rounds out of the 3, you don't get knocked out, you don't get submitted, you win the match, now you 1-0. Next week you get another opponent, you beat them, now you're 2-0, and so on and so forth. So each player gets ranked based upon what their win-loss record is for the season. And then whoever is the number 1 contender, they will play whoever is the current league champion. The league champion defends their title a certain number of times depending upon what sport it is. So for example, hockey, they defend their title every 4 weeks. So if you get an opportunity to play the league champion and it's now a championship week, you will now play the league champion. And if you defeat the league champion, either by winning the most out of 5 rounds or getting a knockout or getting submission, now you are the league champion. And then every 4 weeks, you get to defend your title against the next up-and-coming contender. So it's a really cool, fun concept. If that's something that you would be interested in running for your players, if you're into fantasy sports, definitely let me know. I'll be more than happy to share with you the rules and how it works. You could tweak them for what works for you. And then what we also do, we have a little pot that I collect for, and I use that money to buy the league champion trophies. Well, a trophy for becoming a league champion. So pretty cool concept. Basically combined the concepts of season-long fantasy sports, daily fantasy sports, and mixed martial arts fights to create a very cool and unique fantasy sports experience. So that's pretty much what I spent most of my non-business time doing, getting caught up on that. So the rest of the day was spent working my full-time job. So that's pretty much what I did today. So tomorrow is a brand new day. Hopefully you found this entertaining or insightful. Maybe give you some ideas of things you can do. Because, I mean, you could apply the concept to anything. You could apply it to video games. You could create your own league for FIFA with your friends, or for WWE, which is about to come out, WWE 2K23. You could do it for that. You could do it for Fortnite. You could do it for pretty much any type of game where you can set up a competition. You can create a similar experience that way. So hopefully you found that beneficial. And that concludes this episode. And I will see you again tomorrow. Take care.